So today I'm going to present some work that we are doing at Birmingham in the area of analytics, if you want, of data from mobile devices, both from the devices themselves and from the infrastructure. So my background, I'm a computer scientist, and the activities, so I've been working on different activities, both on the system side, so building real systems, and also on analyzing the data and modeling the data. So we as a group, we work on building systems like mobile system for collecting the data, sensing the data. Then when we collect the data, we model the data usually with a network approach, and we study problems that are usually related to real-world problems, like real applications. So we try to build models that can be applied in order to improve the system themselves. So probably you know this cover. So this cover was in 3 years ago on Science, 2011. So the fact that we have this trend of big data. When we say big data, it is not just in a certain discipline that can be, I don't know, the fact that we have the data from social networks, but also from physics and from biology. And it's a fantastic time to be a computer scientist at the end, because what you have, essentially, you have a lot of very interesting problems to deal with. So this is one trend, so the trend that we have the data, so data from different sources, many sources. And the other trend is that we have, in our pocket, we have a phone. And the fact that we have a phone in our pocket means that for the first time in history, in the history of the humanity, everyone has a device that can send data about themselves, about the people, and can receive data from an external source. So there is this idea of the fact that we are able to collect in real time, because we are almost always connected, data about the people, and we can also receive data in real time. So this is also generating a lot of data, as you can imagine, but we have immense opportunities in this space. Clearly, there are also challenges, and there are also problems related to privacy, as we discussed before, but we have many, many opportunities. Going to discuss today some projects that can show you the potential in using this data. So someone can say, okay, we have data, we have information about people, but people usually think about location. But it's not just location. It's about also activities, because you can infer activities from the accelerometers. And you can also get information like user-generated content. In a phone, at the end, what you have cameras, so you can get images and videos. You can get information, we have proximity sensors, so you can also understand if a person is calling or not. You have a microphone, you have other sensors, the ambient light sensor. Future phones will have different sensors, probably also sensor for pollution. And so the possibility of embedding new sensors in the phone are quite unlimited because of the miniaturization of the devices themselves and because they are very cheap. Inside, you have the accelerometer, you have the gyroscope, you have a Bluetooth, can be used for co-location. So many sensors. The challenge is there to merge and fuse all this information. And the other thing is that you don't have just the device that is generating data, but you have also the person that is using the phone that is generating data. Generating the data on the phone. So people are tweeting on the phone, people are using Facebook, people are checking in Foursquare. That these are activities that have a particular characteristic. These are activities that are in the physical space. And they're activities that are related to a current situation, state, context of the user. So you can merge and link the two things. So, and this is extremely powerful, because you are essentially merging your digital context to the physical one. And we are able to link this. So essentially, what we do in the group, we get all this data, and from sensing device, but also you can get data also from the fabric of the city, like cameras or access point and so on, the cellular infrastructure, data that are generated by the user. You can merge this with data from open data. Then you can extract information like profiles, like you can characterize users in different ways. mobility patterns, user activities, contact patterns. From this information, you can extract models of human behavior. And you can also then use these models in order to improve systems. They can be the computing system, but can be also the system of a city. And this can be used also for building systems that are predictive. So we build this system that we call anticipatory mobile computing systems that are able to provide prediction about the future. So they are not just getting information about the current state, but they are able to predict the evolution of the system itself. This is something that companies are trying to do also now. Google Now, for example, Google Now is about now. So the idea is try to predict what is next. Okay, and in order to do that, you can consider different aspects. One aspect that I'm going to talk now is the prediction of mobility. Prediction of mobility is a hard problem, but there are many applications. Urban planning, advertisement is a big one because you can send information that is relevant to a person. If I know that you are going to have lunch in that part of the city, I can send you information about that. I can display information, can personalize device, so there is a strong interest there. There is also a strong interest in the complex system community about this because there are interesting characteristics that are of these processes, also from a modeling perspective. So there are these two interests, in the physics community, in the complex system community, and also in the, from the point of view of application. Okay. So we have different types of prediction. You can have prediction like the logical location. You can predict the logical location can be home, office. Okay. You can predict transition between different areas. You can predict also GPS location. Okay. And the other problem is not just predicting where you are going, but also when. Okay. Space and time. A simple model, just to introduce the problem, is to use a Markovian model. So it's quite nice because you can build this easily. And you can use a very large body of work, theoretical work in this area. Okay. If you have something like that, you can predict the transition between the different tiles from one location to the other location, and you can build a transition matrix. Okay. It's a simple model. What is the problem with this model? The problem is that it doesn't work. So essentially doesn't work. And so what you can do, you can try, and the other problem that you have is that you don't have enough statistics, because if you are, there might be areas here where nobody goes. And so you can't predict a transition to that place. So what you do, you can try to get data from the phone. And what you can do for the first thing is maybe to identify significant places. This was a work that we did. So when I was at Dartmouth, this is almost 4 years ago, you can extract location where people stay, or you can also extract actually location where the activities, the red spot are people that are sitting, because we use the accelerometer in order to get this information. You have also people driving here, blue. These are not people that are like drowning in the river, but they are error GPS. Okay, so this is a typical example of extracting significant location. So what you can do, you can then extract places in the physical space, and then you can try to predict the probability of transition from a certain area to another area. We did some work on that, but it's okay. You can say, okay, it's interesting, but what you lose is the trajectory. Okay. So what you can do, when you have something like that, you can then build applications that are predictive. So you can say, okay, the next location for this user will be, I don't know, from the School of Computer Science at Birmingham to the, to the music hall, because usually on Tuesday at lunchtime, this person goes to the concert. So I will display some information for this user. This is an example. So as I said, you can do personalized application. You can build a personalized application. You can have targeted content. So this is commercial application if you want. But then the problem, as I said, is okay, this is very fine-grained view of the world. The thing that you want is to try to predict the GPS coordinate of the individual. And one thing that is quite interesting is that this is possible, but the problem is that you need data about that. And the data usually come in this space from companies. And we participated in the Nokia Mobile Data Challenge a couple of years ago. And we got data for 152 smartphones. Actually, we got a small data set for a smaller data set subset for out of this big data set. And from this data set, we built a model, a predictive model of human mobility that is also able to exploit correlation between the users. So, and this is the powerful thing when you use big data, is the fact that you can use not just the data of a single user, but you can correlate data. What we did essentially, we consider, so you have the movement pattern, so multiple people. We build a predictor that does not consider the movement pattern of a single user, but also other users that have mobility patterns that are highly correlated with this user. Okay, so you have a set of traces. You can select the traces of users that are highly correlated in terms of mobility patterns. This is quite interesting because then you can build a predictor. So you can we use a multivariate nonlinear predictor that has in input not just the mobility pattern of a single user, but also the mobility pattern of a different user. And the interesting thing here is the fact that you can see also a sort of correlation with the social links, social information that you get. Because we got also, for these users, the address book. And in the address book, you can infer friendship, or the fact that these people know each other. We consider two friends if they have each other phone number. Usually, you have the phone number of your plumber doesn't have your phone number. You might have a friend that is a plumber, but okay. So this is the idea so the idea is that we use this as a proxy. Okay? But we found a very interesting correlation between social links and correlation in terms of mobility patterns, at least in this data set. I don't want to make strong claims about these things. And so I want to show you like a very short video. Okay, start. Okay, so this is the prediction with one user. So the flag is a prediction. And you see, so the error is quite large for one user. So the data were from the Nokia Research Lab in Lausanne. So it's just an example. So, and then if you use correlation, because you see that the users are synchronized, and we saw this by visualizing the data. What you get essentially is a prediction at a block level. After 3 hours and 1 mile, around 1 mile for all the users after 24 hours in this data set. If you consider social ties. Okay. And as I said, so the error you see here, the error, where you have the social link, so you have 1 order or 2 order of magnitude less in terms of error. This is quite impressive. So this is a hint. So I'm not claiming anything about this, but probably people that are friends have similar correlated behavior, okay, in space. So this is one example. Another example that I want to present, that because people say, okay, this is, okay, mining data, mining big mobile data is evil. And so I want to also to present some good, because I strongly think that there are very good application of these techniques. One application is for sure, so is health and epidemiology. So this was another challenge. We got data from 5 million individuals in Ivory Coast. The idea was to try to use this data for essentially finding new ways of addressing social challenges in terms of health, of provision of care, of provision of services in this country, with Ivory Coast. And what we did, and this was our submission, we won this challenge, and was to try essentially to present a model of a simulation model for predicting the evolution of the infection in space. So you have mobility patterns of people here. So you can build a model of, so you have all these regions that are called sub-prefectures in Ivory Coast, and you can build a network model of transition between the region. And then we also built a model, another session, this is one process, mobility. Then you have another process that is the information process, that is the phone calls, because these are traces of phone calls of users. So these are data from Orange, 5 million people calling over 1 month. So from the registration patterns of the user moving around the country, you can get the mobility patterns. From the call patterns, you can get the social network of the user, essentially. And so then what you can do, you can identify the users that are central in the network, and you can devise strategies in order to inform the population. Because the big challenge here, in this context, is to inform the population. That, for example, a vaccination, an opportunity for vaccination is nearby. Because people really want to be vaccinated and to have water that is clean. But the problem is information. These are countries where there is no infrastructure in terms of health and primary care. So we also got some interest recently also from Ivory Coast itself and the Gates Foundation for this project. And just want to show how we do this. So why this is powerful. So I will just say, what you can build, so as I said, 2 competing processes. One process is a SIR model, susceptible, infected, removed, recovered model. So you have transition of a probability of being infected, from susceptible to infected. And you have a concurrent process. It is a process of from being unaware to be aware, to receive the information. So 2 competing processes. What you can do, you can build a model where you can essentially parameterize and fit using the data, the big data that you have. And so these are the set of equations that are a bit scary, but just to give you a flavor of what you can do from probably there are some people interested in epidemiology among you, but so the idea that from an equation that describes the rate of number of infected over time, you can fit the model and use a parameter for describing the transition in terms of mobility from the data that you get from the cellular network. And you can also use the call matrix in order to model the concurrent process of spreading of information. So I don't have time now to go through the model, but this is the idea. Two concurrent processes that are interlinked, because you see they are interlinked, so there are parameters that are. And the interesting thing here is the fact that you can feed the model from the data. So, and I don't have time for more than that, but I want just to mention that we also started recently a project. It's called Trajectory of Depression, and it's sponsored by EPSRC. And we have, this project is about trying to understand these traces, the GPS traces, in order to understand how people, essentially to detect changes in behavior of people affected by depression. So the problem here is the fact that, so there is a problem of cost also. The fact that people that are essentially, that the NHS followed also outpatient, people that went there just to have like sort of consultation. The problem is that it's very difficult then to follow up. And one possibility is to try to give a device to them that is, people are happy. So we talk with them, people are happy to install an application. And the idea is to see if we can detect automatically changes in behavior from the GPS traces. And if necessary, the person, so we have this collaboration with the youth space at Birmingham, that is a center for youngsters that have mental health problems. You can then call these people or can essentially arrange an appointment with them if necessary. You can use this essentially to prioritize your intervention. So this is a pilot project that has just started, and we are working on this. But just to show you some application, also essentially big data for good. So the people that are doing all the hard work, so these are people in my lab, so PhD student on this side, postdoc on this side, they're sitting there actually. And also I want to thank the previous member, Mario De Domenico, that worked on the challenges that I described, and Paul Moger, that was visiting from France. And so if you have questions, thanks. Good enough.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
How do you think about that? That seems particularly relevant to location data, and it would seem that for some scenarios you don't actually need the level of precision that might be in your raw data, and so there might be some level of abstraction that you can draw to protect people's individual trajectories, but still deliver interesting outcomes or services. Can you
yes, this is a very important aspect, and one way of dealing with that is to do most of the computation on the phone. So you don't send data to a server, so personal data. For example, in the case of the trajectory of depression project, you can analyze the GPS traces, the changes on the phone, and just alert the operator or the officer if necessary, without sending the data from the phone of the individual. So one thing is also the other possibility is to do pre-processing. When you, for example, you want to analyze voice, for example, a typical example is also to analyze emotional states from the voice, from the phone. Location is really privacy sensitive. The other problem is voice, for example. One thing that you can do, you can extract, for example, a feature vector. And the feature vector is very difficult to link back to the real voice. So you can do some pre-processing. Location, in my opinion, is very, very hard to preserve the privacy, because the big problem in this space, you can anonymize the data, but then when you link the data with other sources, for example, the census, you can really identify everyone. Especially in the UK, you can say, okay, this is, especially if a person lives alone or there are just two people, you can find the names. So there's no problem in finding the names of the people.
On the final project you described, are you intending to just use locational data and mobility data, or is the idea to also integrate that with any kind of communication patterns?
So the idea is to use location data and probably the level of activity, so the fact that the person is moving or not. So this is the idea, because it is a pilot. The thing that you can do also is to use phone calls and SMSs and communication data, interaction patterns. You can use that, yes, definitely. So it is something that you can do.
I was curious about that last project as well. Can you say a little bit more about how something as relatively ambiguous as GPS points can tell you that there's an increased risk of depression-related problems?
So what you need to do is to label the data. So the first thing that you need to do is to try to label different patterns for people that are affected by different types of depression. So there's a very large body of literature in this space, the qualitative literature, or the fact that questionnaire people usually, so it's known that people that have a depressive state, that are affected by a depressive state, usually tend to go out less, first of all. And they tend to go to places that are closer to home. People might also tend not to go to work. But this is quite obvious, so you don't need this device. This is very serious if you don't go to work. But you can spot a change, for example, in the area that you cover during a day. Or also the level of activity. Usually, a reduced level of physical activity is associated to a depressive state.
So it's a within individual
Is an individual analysis. It's per individual. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm afraid we must move on. So thanks
Okay.
again to Mirco for a
Thanks.
very interesting talk.